This is a classic restorative practice that I use when I want to just bring it down a notch and, well, restore. So what I recommend, yoga purists would suggest that you have two different kinds of bolsters. That asks a lot of us, but for your knowledge, this is more of a square bolster. And then this one is not square, is it? It's quite round. And sometimes blankets can work. You can roll them, but this one is particularly useful, and I'll show you why shortly. If you don't have a bolster at home, you can use blankets. We get creative with our props when we're at home, and this is at a time when many of us are at home. But it can also be worth just investing in having one of these things. So let's begin. What I suggest is your mat or blankets. You could have a blanket either down on your mat or blanket down on the carpet, whatever makes you really comfortable. But we'll begin by coming into child's pose supported. And that means taking the bolster and bringing it right between the thighs. This could be just a brutal posture for some of us. We may find that we need to have a blanket rolled up between the calves and the back of the thighs, or a blanket rolled up underneath the front of the ankles. And some of us may want to place blankets on top of the bolster just to make it a little higher. The key with this style of practice, this restorative practice, is learning how to create comfortable prop setups so that we can spend a little bit of time in the posture. There's a no suffering clause here, okay? No suffering allowed. So when we come in, let's see how it is. And we come in, we could rest the head, the cheek on one side or the other. Some of us might have the chin on top of the hands. And if I'm honest, which I am, I would prefer to be up just a little bit higher. So we set it up so that we're comfortable. And then slowly releasing the body down and making ourselves comfortable. So this is supported child's pose. And you may notice as you make your way in, that the breath travels nicely into the back of the lungs. As we gradually relax the outside of the body, letting the body settle like a stone, tossed into a lake. Generally, when we do arrive in child's pose at the beginning of a class or the beginning of a practice, as a form of showing up to the moment, well, I acknowledge everything that's here right now. So I notice what my breathing is like today, whether there's some length to the breath or not, whether there's texture to the breath, whether it's smooth or a little heavy or rough. Notice the energy in the body, whether the body feels pretty vital or whether it's tired. And then taking into account also any concerns that we might be carrying. So by acknowledging what's here, it's a form of beginning with all of ourselves present. Then we turn our attention to watching the breath. And noticing sensation. And we give ourselves to the prop. Just take a couple of deep breaths so we can feel the upper back open on the inhale. And then slowly, hands to the ground. Let's inhale, come up. Okay. So why don't we place the bolster perpendicular to our mat? And again, if there's no bolster, we could stack some blankets or some couch pillows, but we'll try. I'd say some height here is a good idea. We'll bring one hip down on the bolster, and the bottom leg will extend forward, and the top leg will extend back behind us. And slowly we will release the right arm to the floor. Now, where you are, you'll need to see, does your top foot float? Is it high? And you could place a blanket under that foot if it's up high. And then there's this, you're looking for the, what we call the sweet spot here. So you could take the top hip forward and then back a little bit and see where you can feel, it's as if you've got fabric all along this left side, where the fabric is beginning to open. I like to extend through my heels so that it's a slightly more dynamic opening of that fabric. But you could also let the legs, the knees bend just a little bit and relax the legs. Sometimes people will take the top arm over the ear. And now what we've got is the entire lateral sheath of fascia being stretched, which is really great for the breath. Just giving ourselves a little bit more room through the rib cage. We relax what we can. Notice how the inhale, you might even feel it permeate into the hip. You've probably heard of the slow food movement. This is like the slow yoga. Think about the opening that doesn't happen through force, that happens through release and allow, invite. Okay, just a couple more breaths here. Notice hip over, hip back. Sometimes people like to have a bolster between the legs here. And one of the sensitive areas in a posture like this is the SI joint back here. So it's meant to be restorative. Adjust if you need to. And we take the hands now to the floor. I like to inhale my way up. Pause. Okay, so one side probably feels a little bit more open than the other side. And we could come to the other side. Laying back. Bottom leg forward, top leg back. And making ourselves comfortable here, reasonably comfortable, so there's some opening happening. Shifting the hip forward, shifting the hip back. So if we've lived for any amount of time, I'll say past 30. That's a random number, not based on science. The body is often not symmetrical. So in a posture like this, we might really feel a difference between sides. You could take the legs wider or draw the feet in, and then just let the body settle. Maybe top arm goes over. You could hold the wrist of the top arm. And if you pull upward toward your hands, extend out through the heel. And we watch the wave of breath roll over the body, feeling in how the diaphragm, ideally on the inhale, it draws downward toward the right leg or the top leg or both legs. And see how much of the body can feel the breath. It's very receptive. I like to think of the body as having ears all over it. So there's more listening going on than talking. Learning to listen to the body. Okay, we're going to make a slow exit here, drawing the legs back together. Knees can be bent. Top hand connects to the ground. Inhale, we come back up. Let's just pause and sit for a moment. Feel what happened there. Okay, so what I'm hoping for is that you feel a little bit more opening across the sides. So we started with a little opening across the back. We've got the sides. Now let's work, well, let's not work on the front. So I would go with a bolster that's not quite as high. And it could be nice to have blocks or blankets available. And what I suggest is folding or rolling the blankets. So they're ready. And then we'll take the soles of the feet together. The knees will go wide so they'll rest underneath the blankets. That way it's not too much. And then we'll come down. So did you see how I placed the bolster right up against the tailbone? I want it pretty close. And then resting downward. Now here, this is key. A couple things that are key. One is, as you draw the shoulder blades down the back, you want to notice, is the face still flush with your ceiling? Because if it's back like this, then we need some support for the head. All right, that's the first thing. The second thing is that for some of us, to extend the arms out so that they land on the ground, we may feel as though we need to have a little support under our arms. So feel in, is this comfortable? You know, it seems like a trivial question, but it's actually a really important question when it comes to the practice. Whatever posture that we take, if the objective is to come to a sense of stillness, like the stone that landed and created all the ripples in the water, and it finally descends and the lake becomes clear, in order for that to happen internally, we don't want to create extra agitation for the body. So we want to set up our container so that whatever enters the container has the ability to still the contents. So we close the eyes. Now, if you happen to have an eye pillow or a towel around, it would be really nice to let the eyeballs rest downward, covering the eyes. And like that stone entering the lake, we watch this descent inviting descent. Settling. Noticing the face and the throat, softening and widening, as if the sides of the face could just slide right off your face. Imagining gills at the throat like we were fish. Breathing in, creating space in the throat. Top chest area, especially around collarbones. Watching the rising and passing of breath without fixing or changing anything. Gradually downshifting from doing to being. Can we hold the whole body in our awareness? When the mind drifts, we just return with tenderness. We see how receptive can we be. Receiving the body's natural intelligence. Feel free to stay longer if you wish. We're going to begin to move our way out of this now. We might take one or both hands to the outside of the thighs, lifting legs in toward midline and rolling onto one side. The hand brings us up. Okay. Was that good for you? I hope it was. So let's set up for one more now. So we've done a little work along the back. We've done some opening along the sides, opening along the front line, whole front line. And now we'll go into a supine twist. So what I suggest here is to have a pillow or a bolster, and we will lie on our backs. Again, if you like to have a blanket down, please do that. And the bolster comes between the thighs. The arms extend out to the sides. And what I'll do is I'll place the bolster between the shins and then just let the legs roll gently out to the left. Now, some of you may find that you want to have something under here, that this twist is a little bit extreme. Notice how it feels, and then prop if necessary. But we do want to have the arms out. You can see that we've got this twist happening here. If we could move right shoulder blade toward left shoulder blade, just slightly, and then turn the head in the opposite direction of the legs, and then give ourselves to the ground and to the breath. And to the moment. And when we go inside, we feel into how this shape is affecting the fabric of the connective tissue. I do like to think of it all as fabric. It's very wet fabric, the fascia. We have all of these names for the parts of the body. And they're beautiful names. And they target very specific areas. And there's usefulness in that. But I also like to think about the body as this whole fluid structure, imagining that it's possible to remove the names of the parts. Feel into the whole. Where is there subtle pulling? Is there tingling anywhere? Does the breath feel fluid? Is there agitation anywhere? Where do we feel the heart beating in the body? We might slip into a little appreciation for that fact. We are being breathed, and the heart is beating. And have very little to consciously do with either one. So it may seem, certainly does to me, that a little thanks and praise is in order. Okay, it's time to move to the other side. So you by now may have noticed that we want to make this as simple as possible so we can keep the sense of relaxation in the body. So you might help the legs. You can keep the bolster. Come up, reposition if need be. You can walk the hips over to the other side a little bit. You just shimmy them over. Then bolster between calves. Check to see, those of us who are a little asymmetrical, how is it here? Do we need more support? Give yourself to the ground. Maybe turning the head in the opposite direction of the legs. Sinking into the exhale. And with eyes closed or open and fixed in one place, we hold the whole body in our awareness. Well, let's say there was an area where we do feel a little contraction or holding. First, can we make a little room for that if that's the case? Just have it be okay. It's like putting out the doormat, sweeping up around the front door and welcoming all the guests in. And we might apply a little bit of extra tender, loving care. It's all too easy when we find holding or contraction or the body not being exactly the way we'd like it to be hard on the body or punishing or somehow take it personally. We welcome it all. Approach with tenderness. Welcome the guests. And feel how the breath expands across the back and the back of the arms. Feeling into the tide, how it reaches the shore and then it recedes again. Isn't this good news? Just take a couple more breaths. Turning the head so the face is flush with the ceiling. Maybe helping the legs up. Shifting the hips. Let's take our bolster or our blankets now underneath the knees. We're setting ourselves up for Shavasana, so let's make it as comfortable as we can. Could be under the knees, could be there's a thin blanket under the head. Releasing the arms wide, checking in. Beginning again with the descent, the dropping. Feel how the skull gently kisses the ground. Notice where the bones make contact. Notice how the exhale is the subtle letting go. And in our time in Shavasana, we practice letting go with each breath. You might notice what there is to let go of. Allowing tension to release. Inviting constriction to soften. Sometimes we find ourselves with holding patterns around beliefs or opinions of ourselves or others. What if we soften and release those knots a little bit? Allow ourselves to be supported by the ground beneath us, by the breath, by our beating hearts. And by the natural intelligence of the body. Feeling cared for. By that intelligence. So if you prefer to remain here in Shavasana, please do so. Toes and fingers gently. Drawing one knee in at a time, pausing long enough to give ourselves a hug. Extending one arm, we roll to one side and offering the benefits of our practice to all beings everywhere. May we all be happy and healthy and at peace. We make our way up. Coming to a comfortable seat. Allowing the sit bones to root, the spine to lengthen. Just learning how to trust and surrender to our natural intelligence, to the natural intelligence. Means that we don't have to carry quite so much weight on our shoulders. Letting go. Let's make it an art form and a regular practice. Let's draw the palms together. One Om. Inhale. Exhale. Inhaling. Om. Bring the hands to the forehead. Right thought. May we be steady and present and joyful. The hands come to the mouth. Right speech. May our words improve upon the silence. And our hands come to our heart. Right action. May we be the change that we wish to see. Namaste.